and will be uploaded to the Fair Impact website. We'll be doing a short Mentimeter survey. I've posted details of how to join in the chat, and I'll give you more information about that later. So good morning. Our Fair Implementation Workshop series aims to help three key stakeholders, research performing organizations, repositories and data service providers, and the national level initiatives to become more familiar with fair enabling tools, approaches, and methods. Each workshop will provide an overview of specific fair enabling activity, share information on recent developments both from within the Fair Impact project and other initiatives, as well as offering examples of good practice, practical tips and recommendations. Each workshop will be a maximum of 90 minutes and will include plenty of time for questions and discussion throughout the session. Fair Impact is funded under the European Commission Horizon Europe programme and is one of the InfraEOS projects. The project builds on the work of the Horizon 2020 Fairs Fair project and is a coordination and support action focused on expanding fair solutions in Europe. The Fair project has 28 partners from 10 member states and the UK. The project began in June 2022 and will finish in May 2025. So essentially, the Fair Impact project is working to support the vision of a European Open Science Card where fair data can be shared and reused. Our work focuses on identifying current and emerging tools, methods, and approaches in supporting their adoption. A key aim for us is to help ensure that useful resources developed by the community of practice can be adopted by others. So at this point, I'd like to go to menti.com to conduct a short poll. So in the chat, you'll find a link, menti.com, that you'll just need to type into your device, your tablet, or your laptop. You'll just need to enter the code 52369540 to join us. What I'll do is I'll just share that now. So you should be able to see a fair implementation workshop asset on the screen. So you just need to go into menti.com in your device and use the code 52369540 to join us. And I'll look to share our first question now. So just by starting, finding a bit about who's joined us today. So last session in October, we had over 10 countries represented from 2 continents. I can see that we've got another strong European contingent today, which is good to see. Oh, we've got Iran and a new continent for us now, so that's great to see and welcome. Fantastic. Can see a few more of you joining in on Mentimeter now. So again, that's menti.com on your device, and the code to join us is 52369540. So at this point, I'll just continue to the next slide. So thank you for participating in the first question. We just have a couple more before we get started with Luke. So what organization do you represent? We've got 4 options and another for you to pick from. So research performing organization, a repository and data service provider, a national level initiative, an international initiative, or other. So again, this just gives us a really good understanding of who our audience is today. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to delivering another interactive session through my colleague, Luke Brinkman for the DANS Institute. Okay, so I can see we've got a strong representation of research performing organizations, but also a healthy spread amongst other institutions and backgrounds as well, which is really great to see as well. Okay, I'll just move on to the next slide at this point. So what is your role? So just a couple examples: data steward, a researcher, research manager, policymaker, service provider. These are all roles that joined us in the last session. We had 22 different roles from 29 responses, so a real diverse group last time. So again, we had training coordinators, community managers, we had RDM support and policymakers as well. And I can see the data scientist, librarian, strategy manager, scientific networking. So it's really excellent to see a real diverse group of individuals coming to join our session, and it's something we we'd really like to encourage and continue to develop such a wide network from different backgrounds as well. So again, thank you for participating in our opening Menti. So at this point, I'll just take you on. I think there's two more questions at this point. Oh, sorry, this is the final question before I introduce Luke to you. So what does the word community mean to you? This is something we'll be discussing at length and in detail in this session. So just be really good to get an understanding of what does it mean to you, personally and professionally. So it's great. We got connecting, sharing, stakeholders, having a common goal, sense of belonging. Yeah, a lot of words around kind of collaborative and common goals, connecting with other individuals as well. Inspiration, another great word, and discussion too. So it's yeah, thank you again for joining us this morning. It's great to have so many of you on the call this morning as well. So I will be leaving the Menti open, so do feel free to continue to add your words of community as we go through the session. But at this point, I will hand over to my colleague, Luke Brinkman, who will be leading the session. So Luke is a research data expert at DANS, a former researcher in neuroscience. He's also involved in the Fair and Prep project, the national and international development of open science communities. So at this point, I hand over to my colleague, Luke.
Thanks a lot, Errol. So let me share my screen. So you can see my screen now, right?
I can see it, yes.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's really a pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to talk to you about community engagement and also work with you on community engagement to see how we can put this to practice together. So the aim of today is I would like to, yeah, sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat, so if my voice gives up at some point, my apologies. So the aim of today is I would like to share some experience with you, experiences that I have in setting up and managing open science communities. The first one was in Utrecht University, and I'm now also involved, as Al already mentioned, in the Dutch National Network of Open Science Communities and the International Network of Open Science and Open Scholarship Communities. And I want to combine also here some things that I've learned in several courses. So one is I was a participant in the Open Leaders program organized by Mozilla, which also has some overlap with the Open Life Science program. And this year I also took an excellent course in fundamentals of community management from the CSCCE. So that's the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement in the United States. And I would like to combine this knowledge and share it with you for you to explore opportunities. So what can community engagement mean to you in your institution, or for you as a repository or service provider, or also in the context of European projects that you might be involved in. So that's really the aim of today. So before we get started, I think it's good to have some common ground on what a community actually is. And when I looked at the word cloud, that's the words that you that were brought to your minds in the Menti, there are already a lot of things that I think are really spot on. So community is a term that is really loosely used. It's also becoming a bit of a buzzword, I think, but often it is also used when people are actually just talking about a group, or when they are talking about a certain marketing strategy. But for me, when we talk about communities, it is really about putting these three ingredients together. It's the first and foremost is a shared goal. A community has a clear shared goal, and this goal is something that an individual member of a community cannot achieve on its own. But by being a member of the community, this goal becomes achievable. Crucial in any community is the connections between the members of the community. So by interacting with fellow members of the community, that leads to opportunities. And these opportunities make it possible to reach this shared goal. Another thing that is really essential to a community is a sense of belonging. We also saw it already also in the word cloud. I was really happy to see it already there. People really strongly identify by being part of a community. An example that I sometimes use is people often put stickers on their laptops. Think about what this signifies. I think people are signaling the communities that they identify to. And community engagement is really powerful, because if you put these three ingredients together, it's a very strong driver for behavioral change. And it's scalable, and it can have really large impact. So one example is, for example, community engagement is what is driving organizations like Extinction Rebellion or farmers' protests. And of course, you're probably familiar with many examples from the open source movement, where people get together and create high quality software tools like statistical software like JASP, or programming language R, or operating systems like Linux. But it can also, community engagement can also be much more simple and on a smaller scale, for example, enabling sporting associations. One of the communities that I am part of is the Food Forest in my hometown of Leusden, where the goal is to make a case that we can actually grow food, fruits, vegetables, nuts, in a way that is completely compatible with nature. So by increasing biodiversity and taking good care of the soil. But I know very little about plants. But actually in this community, there are people who are ecologists, who are farmers. And by working together with these people, we are able to run this food forest. And I also experience a very strong sense of belonging to this community. So what I'd like to ask you to do now is to think for yourself, what communities are you part of? So, and these can be communities in your personal life, but it can also be in a professional setting. And think about, what is the goal of the community that you are part of? What are the connections? In what way are you connected with other members of the community? And what are the opportunities that leads to? And can you also think about, how would you describe your sense of belonging? So we're going to have a quick breakout session where in small groups of 3 people, you can discuss amongst each other. Just take one example of a community that you are part of and think about its goal, its connection and opportunities, and its sense of belonging. So, and we'll just have a quick chat with the fellow people here in the session for about 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene here in the main room.
Okay, everyone's back with us now, Luke.
Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice chat with the fellow participants on communities. Although I'm very curious to hear about all your communities. We're not going to discuss it here in the plenary room, just to have enough time for the rest of the program. So why are we talking about communities here, in particular in the context of open science and fair data? So when you think about open science and fair data, in essence, it's a culture change. We need a culture change amongst researchers to fully embrace open science principles and to make their data fair. So there are some theories on how to change research culture. One which I like in particular is this one from Brian Nosek, where he says, okay, if we want to have a sustainable change in research culture, we need collaborative action at these 5 layers of this pyramid. So we need infrastructure to make it possible. We need training and support to make it easy. We need engagement of the research community. We need incentive structures in place to make sure that these kind of practices are also rewarded, and we need policies to regulate it. And I think when we look at open science and fair data, we are making a lot of progress in the bottom two layers of the pyramid. We have infrastructure out there to where people can share their data and their publications. We have training either in place or in development to make it more easy to put these practices, to put open science to practice. There are large-scale initiatives to change the reward structures in science, for example, in Coara. And there are policies being put in place either at the institutional level or the national level or the European level to make sure that that open science is also demanded and required. But I think that the layer of the community that's getting the least attention is the middle one. Maybe because it's also a little less tangible. But I would like to argue that the middle layer in the pyramid is actually the most important one when it comes to changing research culture. And the reason for this is that you can map these 5 layers of the pyramid, which you see on the bottom side of the screen, to the cycle of innovation. So a cycle of innovation describes who gets on board with a new technology or a new development in what stage. And why do they get on board? And you see that there are different people with also different personality traits in this model. So first and foremost, there are the innovators. These are the people that have been practicing open science already for decades. As soon as it was possible, as soon as the infrastructure was there, they would do it. And even if the infrastructure was not there, these were the people that were actually building the infrastructure. And they did this regardless of what other people were doing, regardless where it would pay off for them in the end, and was not demanded from them. So the next group of people who get on board with a new innovation are the early adopters. They get on board as soon as they see a new technology and there's the training or the tutorials or the information is available for them to adopt this new tool or practice. But then if you look at the bulk of this distribution, which is the early and late majority, these are people who get on board. They have different trigger points that by which they change their behavior. And one of the things that is really crucial there is community. So what this means is that these people will actually do what their colleagues are doing. So it's about what are the norms within a community, and they will follow the norms of the community. And of course, there are also other triggers like incentives to make it rewarding, policies, and there are other people who are more sensitive to these kind of interventions. So, but as you can see, the bulk of the research community is sensitive to interventions at the level of community. That's why I say that community may have the potential to reach the most people, the largest proportion of the research community. So that is one of the reasons that I'm so enthusiastic about being involved with initiatives on open science communities. So here you see an overview of the International Network of Open Science and Scholarship Communities. It's a network of 32 communities, local hubs in different cities, in 16 different countries. And we have over 2,300 members who have signed up to one of these local communities. This is an initiative that a colleague of mine and I started in 2018. We were then working as researchers at the University of Utrecht, and we set up the Open Science Community Utrecht. And in the beginning, it was basically nothing more than a website where people could say, hey, I have some experience with open science, and I want to share that with the rest of the world. or in this case, share it with my colleagues in Utrecht. So, but more about that later. So we also started to help out people at other universities. And now in the Netherlands, we have open science communities, all university cities. And as you just saw, we've been helping people abroad also to set up communities like that and form a network with us. So what is an open science community? It's a community for researchers by researchers. That means that it is really about researchers are the main target audience of the community, but it's also open to support staff and students. The first thing that we do in an open science community is to make the current open science practices more visible. So as you saw in the cycle of innovation, people are sensitive to what are my colleagues doing. So that's why we say it's important to make it more visible when colleagues are putting open science or fair data to practice. The second thing that we do is connecting newcomers to open science or fair data and hook them up with peers who already have some experience with open science or fair data, so they can learn from each other. So to stimulate peer-to-peer knowledge exchange. At the same time, an open science community is also a place where we collect input from the members, which we can feed into other layers of the pyramid, so to policymakers, to providers of services or infrastructure, to share what researchers with an interest in open science think about their services, their policies, or their infrastructure. So there needs to be a healthy balance within the community between people who already have experience with open science and those who are there to learn. And I think roughly there is about 80% of the people who join open science communities, they don't have a lot of experience with open science yet. So they are there to learn. And a smaller group, about 20%, they actually are already knowledgeable and they have experience to share. Of course, these numbers differ from one community to the other and also to what aspect of open science we're talking about. Whether we talk about open access, open data. And it's important to note here also that in these open science communities, we take open science in a very broad sense. So we also explicitly include making a connection between academia and society. So, for example, in the form of citizen science. So when we look at the community, as an open science community, its goal is to make open science the norm. The connections and opportunities that people get, they come from the interactions between the members. So in particular, the peer-to-peer learning from your colleagues, seeing how they put open science to practice, and to see whether you can adopt those practices. There are also opportunities to provide input to policy, services, and infrastructure. And people experience a strong sense of belonging. So you sign up to become a member of an open science community. And when you sign up, you also get a profile page on the website. And many communities also have things like stickers or water bottles to really encourage this sense of belonging. So what does it look like in practice? Here's an example of a website of an open science community in Amsterdam, where you see everyone is there on the website, most of them with a picture, and it's listed what are their interests, what do they want to learn, and what is the expertise that they already have that they're willing to share with the community. And then very important is organizing events where researchers who already have some experience with open science can showcase how they put open science to practice. So here's an example from a researcher sharing his experience in the Faculty of Geoscience. Here's another example of a researcher sharing experience in the Faculty of Veterinary Science. These were both at Utrecht University. At Utrecht University, we also had these nice water bottles to make it also visible to other people that the community exists and that it's open to everyone. We have online platforms, like for example on Slack, where people can ask questions about open science or share opportunities, job opportunities, or share events that might be interesting for other members. It's about organizing webinars and also sharing these materials online with one another. It's about co-organizing events, like, for example, the National Open Science Festival, where the open science communities in the Netherlands are also heavily involved in. And it's about feeding into policy documents. So there's another example from the Netherlands where we collected input from all open science communities in the Netherlands and then condensed that and provided that feedback to the National Program Open Science in two iterations. And actually, when you look at the current plans for open science in the Netherlands, then a lot of the things that were actually provided as input by the open science communities are actually in there. So it's also an effective way of making ourselves heard. So when you take one step back and look at what are the kind of behaviors that you observe within an open science community, and this is a slide that I took from materials from the Open Life Science program. And you see different kinds of behaviors. So, for example, there are people there's gifting, people giving away mostly their time to help out other people. You see people creating things together, creating tools or writing an article together. Another kind of behavior is soliciting ideas, getting ideas from your community or getting feedback on early ideas. And a very important thing is also learning through use. So if you want to learn a new practice or a new tool, you can do that together with other members of the community and share experiences. And last is the networking of common interests. So that's providing input to infrastructure policies and services as a community as a whole. So why do people do this? Why do they spend their time and give away their time in a community? This really boils down to something that is called social capital. It is this sense of belonging. It is by contributing to the community. It's actually it also feels good, and it sounds very simple, and that is because it is very simple. We are social animals, and we like to belong to groups. And when we invest in groups, that also makes our connection with the group stronger. So it's really about these interpersonal relations, and these are based on trust. But by being part of the group, contributing to the group, you can create a really strong connection. And when there are many people contributing to the group, then you have a strong flux of social capital going through this social economy. And that makes a very strong community. So when you zoom out even further, not looking at the behaviors of individuals within a community, but looking analyzing the community as a whole, you can see that the community can go through several phases. So the first phase is where a community basically resolves around one individual or a small group of people, sending out information to the rest of the community. When you go one stage further, there's also a more bidirectional flow of information, where members of the community also contribute to this larger, to this one person or smaller group. So then you have an interaction between the group and the central person, and the central person to the group. And the phase where it gets really interesting is when there is more interaction between the members of the group directly. So, for example, in the form of smaller working groups. And this is where you get from a transmissive mode of information to also a transactional mode, which can also lead to a transformational mode, where people actually take the initiative to, for example, branch out and start another small sub-community dedicated to a specific topic. So this is where people in the community actually actively take on leadership roles within the community. And I must say that within the network of open science communities, I think we're mainly in stage 2. It's still a lot of the activities depend on a small group, a core group, sometimes even just one individual. And we're still in the process of moving to this third and fourth stage, where we have more interactions between the members directly. Another way of looking at this is something that is called the mountain of engagement, and it's describing what are the different roles that people have within the community. And at the bottom, the lowest level of engagement is an endorser. So these are people who are listed on the website because they like the initiative, but they don't partake in events, and they certainly don't organize things in the community. But nevertheless, this is already a really important group. So, for example, at Utrecht University, we had a lot of full professors who joined the community. They were not active in workshops, but still they were on the website, and that signals also to people who are still maybe not sure whether they want to join the community. It's also a strong signal that it's okay to join this community. So it's also really important. And then when you move up, you go to people who actually partake in workshops or events, people who provide the content of these kind of events. And if you go higher up in leadership positions, where people actually take the initiative to organize an event or lead and manage a community. And the challenge in a community is to get a nice balance between these 5 layers of engagement. And also, how can you stimulate people to climb this mountain of engagement? How can you stimulate a participant to actually also provide the content, or maybe someone who already organized, someone who was a speaker in an event? Can you also, how do you motivate that person to climb the ladder one more step and also start to proactively organize events, for example? So I hope you realize at this point that a community is that this is actually pretty complex, and for a community to prosper, there's a lot of work is needed at the background. So that's why the people who are key to a community are community managers, and community managers are also often called invisible leaders. Because if they do their work properly, you won't see them. You only see on the outside, you see a community with a lot of engagement, a lot of activities. And it seems to the outside that that is actually happening on itself. But this is really a common misconception. A community doesn't run itself. It is at the background, a small group of people who are acting as community managers who make this all possible. These are the people who contact members of the community, who ask around and contact members of the community to see what they find important. These might be the people who organize an event and actively ask people to contribute. So these people are really important, and the CSCCE has developed a nice skills wheel describing what kind of skills people actually need to be a good community manager. And it's a long list. So there are interpersonal skills. You need to talk to a lot of people, have a good sense of what is going on in the community, what people need. So you need to talk all of your members of the community on a regular basis. Then there are skills related to program management. How do you organize interesting events? There are also skills related to program development. So you constantly need to think, okay, if we have one format that is working in one community, well, maybe it doesn't work for another section of the community. So you need to experiment with different formats and constantly develop your program. There are communication skills that are really important. Talking to your members in the community, but also communicating with people outside of the community. The tone of voice is really critical if you want to convince people to join your community, for example. It needs to be inclusive, but it also needs to be clear. And there are technical skills, because there are also it also involves developing websites with certain features for interactions. There's also data generated in the open science communities on members, what they want to learn, what their experience is, how many events are organized. And there's also, it also needs, you need skills to process that data and also visualize and communicate this data. So it's a really complex job, and I think it deserves a lot more recognition. So I'm really happy that in the Netherlands, when we look at the national program Open Science, this is also explicitly recognized. So here, this is the way the national program in the Netherlands is organized. We have these 4 thematic lines, and orthogonal to that are these 5 layers of this pyramid, which I presented in the beginning. So community engagement is really at the heart of the strategy for open science in the Netherlands. So, for example, in this program is also the ambition that in 2025, all open science communities are thriving and form an entry point of research community engagement for the National Plan Open Science actions. And this is actually something that is now also put to practice. That that is now a national investment of 1.2 million euros for local open science communities, so that local open science communities can actually hire a community manager, because this was still an issue. Some universities already invested in their local communities and have appointed or have enabled budget for community managers, but others have not. So now this is taken care of for the next 3 years by this national investment. So, as I mentioned, it's not only a Dutch initiative, it's something that is also branching out outside of Europe. And what we did to stimulate this is we have developed a starter kit, where in 4 stages you are helped to set up your own open science communities. And more recently, we also have a incubator program. I forgot to mention here that this program was actually developed with as part of this Mozilla Open Leaders program. And now we also have a 12-week online program where we help up to 10 participants to start and set up their own open science community. This program was initially developed by funding from the Aurora Alliance and is now being followed up on by the project Skills for INOSC, which enable us to offer this program twice a year, and it's open for researchers and support staff to start your own open science community. The next run of the program starts in January and it's already fully booked, but as I said, it will be offered twice a year. Let me have a look at the time. Yeah, okay. So what I would like to do next, what comes next is another breakout session, basically that's the remainder of the program, is to explore what kind of opportunities do open science communities or the principles of open science communities offer to you. But before we go there, I would like to take a stop here to see whether there are any questions so far. Yes, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for this information and this presentation, which is extremely useful. I was wondering about long-term sustainability in the creation and the management of this community, and if you have any experience or tips for when management changes, when people moves around, when some people leave or comes. How do you have any insight on this?
Yeah, that is a very, very important topic. So I think that many open science communities, they start with a small group of people who are really enthusiastic. But it's also, I mean, people change jobs, and you need to have a procedure, an onboarding procedure to also welcome new people. And the thing that's crucial there is at some point you need institutional funding. So, and for some institutes, they have been really successful in doing this, and others, have been arguing for this for years, and they still have not managed. But I think the only way to make it sustainable, if this is recognized by, acknowledged by a local institution, and it also means that you need to collaborate. with your university library, with your institutional open science program, with your IT department. So you really need to build up these relations in order to make it to move towards this long-term sustainability. But there needs to be, at some point, someone has to pay the bill.
Thank you.
More questions? If not, then let me share my screen again. So the next part will be a breakout session where we in groups that are a bit larger than in groups of 5 people, you will discuss 3 questions. The first question is, would an open science community be useful in your local context? The second question is, do you want to be the person who starts the open science community, or do you know other people who might be interested in this? And the third question is, maybe you say, okay, setting up an open science community is maybe not the thing that is most relevant for me at this moment in our local context, but maybe you can apply the principles of open science, of community engagement in other ways. So I suggest we take a really short break. There's 5 minutes here on the slide, but I think we've been running a little bit out of time. So let's say we take a 3-minute break just to quickly go to the bathroom or get a drink. And then we reconvene in the breakout rooms. So you can use this URL, tinyurl.com/ilovecommunity. Make sure to put I Love Community in caps. And there you will see a table that looks like this. You will be allocated to breakout rooms. Each breakout room has a number. You can just scroll down in this document to find your group. And then you'll have 15 minutes to answer these questions and provide your input. And then we'll reconvene again here in the main room to have a recap of what was happening in the groups. So, Elle, I think you can already go ahead and open the breakout rooms. And then the actual breakout session will start in 3 minutes from now.
Okay, go ahead, Luke. I think everyone's returned back to the room now.
Thanks, Elle. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice discussion in your breakout rooms. So let's quickly go over the rooms, and I would like to give the opportunity for someone from each of the groups to, in 1 minute, just give some of the highlights that were discussed in your group. So let's start with group 1, Emily, Megan, Dennis, and Marco. Who can I give the word?
I can give a quick update. So I'm Emily. For the first question, would an open science community be useful? We all agreed it would be useful. We were both in a university context and in INOSC, so in some way it already existed, maybe not in a formal way, and in other ways it would be useful to strengthen it, I think, or to set it up. Question 2, would you start an open science community? I think we had a variation of answers there, as to some people already had a community, and for example, our university wants to start one. Again, here we have to find better ways to engage with the community, and there might be informal communities that already exist, and how can we tap into that? And in the last question, we discussed it a bit, what other ways the principles of community engagement might be used. We mainly talked about the example of libraries, where a community could be a way to keep libraries relevant in the future. So this is very shortly what we discussed.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's indeed also our experience, that we closely collaborate with different with university libraries, and also made the connection between librarians and researchers there. Thanks a lot. Going to group number 2, I don't see any names, but I think you know who can I give someone from group 2 the word?
Okay, I could say some words about this. My name is Lisa, and we have a group of 4 people. We discussed that this open science community, this is very nice initiative, and it would be really useful to provide information toward open science via community. But we were discussing that there is one organization which have already this kind of community ongoing, but the other ones didn't have this. So we discussed that it comes to the resources which are available, and also considerations which kind of activities, what kind of work is most impactful for researchers, which are the priorities in the work, and so forth. So it's all about thinking about how to combine these things in organizations, and start discussions, and find resources for this kind of work. And the key question what we were discussing was that what would be the target group to build awareness towards open science and FAIR principles? Is it inside the organization, or do we have to reach out more to the stakeholder groups? And one thing what would be useful is if there is already this kind of communities, and there is lots of these, how to normalize practices between them, because there is differences in practices. And then do you want to start an open science community? It would be nice, but we were discussing that we haven't a bandwidth to do so at the moment. And it seems that, as we heard, that requires quite a lot of work. From that perspective, that who would be managers and take care of everything regarding this.
Yeah,
we didn't answer the question 3 because we find it a little bit difficult to answer. So we didn't put our names or email addresses at the moment here, but I think that persons who were involved can announce their contact information for you if they like to go on with this issue.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. It's yeah, it's interesting. I think that this holds for many organizations that there already are initiatives going on. Also in terms of more informal communities. So we also see at some open science communities they are like an umbrella organization where different sub-communities can also coexist, and where you help also these different sub-communities. So this would be one opportunity. But I agree with you. It is a lot of work, and it is. But if you can also crowdsource this a little bit to get some people who are already active in these kind of networks to do this in the context of an open science community, then that might be one way to go about. Group 3, I don't see any input in the document, but maybe is there something that you want to share?
Well, group 3 was not really a group, so I think you can skip that, Luke. Thank you.
And we go to the next one. Thanks, Marianne. Group number 4, Suzanne, Akos, Jennifer.
Jennifer has already gone, sorry, and my voice is not very good, but I will try to recap a little bit. I do not know who has put the points there because I didn't open the table. So we were discussing mainly only the question 3 because it's interesting because Jennifer and we are in the same project. We have to create a community around researchers. So we were discussing the possibilities that are there. There was Akos also in the meeting, and we tried to understand a little bit what are his experiences from creating a community. What would be the interesting? What would it be the crucial things that could be there? Even if he said there are no type of best practices, he suggested going for small communities because not all researchers in the different areas are having the same interests. So and then a community manager is needed coming out from the community. It cannot be someone from outside who is managing it. So this would be in general what we have talked about. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. I think feel free to have a look at the starter kit that we have, and feel free to use that information also in any way you want in other contexts besides open science communities. Many of the principles that are also explained there apply to communities in general. So feel free to reuse that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Group number 5, Loredana, Sandra, and Marjan.
Happy to try to summarize this with the colleagues. So we looked at the situation in the various countries we represent, Belgium, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Loredana reported from Belgium that there are similar initiatives, but it would be good to promote them and also have more participation. And that returned also in the second question. So maybe not directly start, but expand existing communities. Because, Loredana, please help me out there. Other kinds of stakeholders in addition to the researchers.
Yes, indeed. I was mentioning that it would be useful for the innovations developed in the framework of these communities to be taken up by other communities as well, like citizens, public authorities, and so on. So it would be important to expand these open science communities to other type of stakeholders as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. It is actually something that we also considered, and in the very early days of the open science communities, that was at some point also the plan to also include citizens in the communities. In the end, we did not go for that because for a community to be appealing, it also needs to be the scope of the community really needs to be clear. So, but I'm not arguing against it, but this is just one decision that we took with the open science communities. We thought it would be less appealing for either of the groups, but it is, I think still it's something, I mean, working with communities is always experimenting and trial and error. So yeah, I'm happy to hear, to see what is happening in that regard, what will happen in that regard. Was there still a 6th group, Al?
No, that was it, Luke.
Thanks. Then I'll stop sharing my screen. So the only thing left then is Al has a couple of questions ready to go as a final exit Menti. Before we go there, are there any questions in general? No further questions. If you have any questions later on, so you're free to contact me or someone else from the International Network of Open Science Communities. I'll put a link to the website in the chat. You can always contact me if you have further questions on this. If not, then we can go to the exit Menti, Al.
Yeah, so thanks, Luke. It's the same instructions to join as before. So typing in menti.com into your device and entering the code 523695540. There's only 2 questions, so we'll be wrapping up shortly. Thanks again for joining, for participating and engaging throughout the session. And a really big thank you to Luke for leading the session as well. I think I can speak for all of us when we say it was a fascinating and a really interesting led discussion, and plenty of thought and plenty to take away from it as well. So just 2 questions for you as a group to reflect on. Please do let us know what did you get out of today's session that can help with your own work. So we've got a comment so far. So it's a good discussion about community building, new aspects on community building, next steps and motivations for it. So I think that's very well summarized the thoughts of the group today as well. So I'll just leave it there for another 30 seconds or so before we move on to the final question. So please do share your thoughts. As I say, on your devices, you just type in menti.com and then use the code 52369540. Thank you. There's a second comment in there. Please do keep them coming. Plenty are coming through now. So finding better ways to engage with communities, enthusiasm to start, overview of possible roles and phases. Yeah, an excellent point. I think enthusiasm is a particularly important one to continue the effort to keep these going as well. Good presentations and discussions. Yes, it helps to get more information for the future work. Yeah, absolutely. I think information, enthusiasm, and ideas, as these are coming through now, are all really key points to keeping and building a community for the future as well. So I can see we've just hit past, so I'll just quickly go on to the next slide before we close the session for the day. So based on what you've heard today, what action do you plan on taking based on what you've heard at the presentation today? So just share your thoughts, and we'll look to close and wrap up very shortly as well. So thank you again for joining us today, and for all your time, for your thoughts, your comments as well. We will look to share these all the slide deck and the recording from today's session on the Fair Impact website. We'll also have a link to Zenodo where the slides will be made available as well. But as I say, those 2 links will be made available where you registered for this event on the Fair Impact website.
And thanks also to you, Al, for doing all the logistics. Excellent job.
Okay, well, we'll leave that open. So if you do, here we go. To check on possible local OS communities. Yes, absolutely. I think it's great that we look to our open science colleagues and communities because, as Luke mentioned, there are a number of them out there that I myself wasn't aware of. I plan to reach out to other communities to see if collaborating with other existing communities is possible. Absolutely, there were plenty of case studies and examples today. Rest for the next Open Science Community Incubator program. Yes, absolutely. And again, the OSC Incubator program in January. That's great to hear that you'll be joining in that session as well. We'll look forward to the community. We'll look forward to welcoming you there, I'm sure. But I think as we're a couple of minutes past our session time, finally, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining again. And I'll leave this Menti open for the next 20 minutes or so. So if something does come to mind that you're really keen to share, we'd love to hear from you. And again, we'll share these results with the community following the presentation as well. So just to say, finally, thank you again for joining us today, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Yeah, that was really interesting, Luke. I thought